Yo, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC video. I'm your host Jose Rocks, and today is going to be the first day of the new season, which is Regulation D. And I wanted to go ahead and make a usage prediction video. This is not a top 10 best Pokemon video, so I don't want to get that confused with you. This is a top 10 usage video. So this is the top 10 Pokemon I feel like are going to have the most usage in the format. And I'm going to start from 10 all the way down to the number 1 Pokemon I think is going to have the usage as far as just the early parts of Regulation D, or maybe just the first month. These are just going to pretty much be my predictions. I'm going to redo a similar video to this, but it's going to be top 10 usage at Worlds. And then it's going to be after, I kind of played the first month of Regulation D and kind of assessed the metagame. And I'm going to go ahead and make another one. And that one's going to be, like I said, based on pretty much the Worlds format. Regulation D hasn't officially been announced as the Worlds format, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Worlds format. But I will do a separate video for that. So getting right into this, I do want to go ahead and start with the poster Pokemon that I chose, which is going to be Cresselia at number 10. So after playing a couple of weeks with it, Cresselia is really, really good, but it's nowhere to the point where I thought it was going to be on all teams. And I think that's kind of the fact that a lot of people expect it to come with Trick Room or like Ursaluna, so they're bringing like hard counters for it. But that being said, it's still a good Pokemon. I see people, the main item is kind of Mental Herb, but I've seen people like get around that and just not even try to taunt it and rather fake it out, right? And to get around that, I've seen a couple people converting over to Covert Cloak, no pun intended. And this is pretty good because a lot of times they assume that you're a Mental Herb, so they won't even waste time trying to waste a taunt on you. So they'll just try to fake you out turn 1, right? And then if you have the Covert Cloak, you can still get that Trick Room up, right? And this main thing is to set up Trick Room. Like, it's really a really bulky Pokemon. Its new move, Lunar Blessing, is way better than Lunar Dance because you don't have to faint in order to use it. And you're just healing up. It's kind of like Life Dew, but it heals status as well. And that's just really powerful. Cresselia also gets access to Ally Switch, is one of the most annoying moves from Sword and Shield that they could have left there. But here it is, but it didn't nerf it, so it can fail like Protect. So I guess that is kind of like helps it out a little bit from not being so annoying. But Cresselia is really going to be the only one using it. I've only seen this move twice in Scarlet and Violet, and that was on an Armor Rouge set that I ran into twice in my entire first 3 regulations, right? So it's really not common, which is really good for the format, because we don't really need Ally Switch running around, right? So some other support moves that it get is Thunder Wave. You can use this outside of a Trick Room team, and Thunder Wave can be really good for you. Skill swap, so you can skill swap your Levitate over to one of your partner Pokemons. Safeguard helps you deal with a Mungus, and then Moonlight, you just much rather have Lunar Blessing. And I've also seen like some Helping Hand and Screens versions of Cresselia, but that's pretty much what it's gonna do. It gets access to a wide variety of special attacking coverage moves. Icy Wind, Moonblast, Thunderbolt, Energy Ball, Ice Beam. It gets a lot of different things. So it's a really good Pokemon. Its stats are really good. They did get a nerf on its defenses, but it's still one of the most bulky Pokemon in the game. The most common Terra type one is probably going to be Fairy. You may see some Dark types just to get around Prankster Taunt and then go with the Covert Cloak. That way they're covering both options from like a Thundurus. Thundurus is most likely going to be carrying the Prankster ability, right? So if they want to fake you out and taunt you to cover for both, if you go for Dark Terror plus Covert Cloak, then you get around both of those, right? And then you're really in a good spot from there. So that's going to be Cresselia. Cresselia is going to be number 10 for this list. So going on to our next Pokemon. And let me know with a comment below if you guys agree or you disagree with any of this. This is just my opinion. It is subject to change, which it will in my next video that I do before the Worlds format. But so going into number 9 is going to be Amoonguss. We have to have the Shroom on here, right? It's always going to be Regenerator. People don't really run Effect Spore. Even though Effect Spore is a good ability, Regenerator just allows for so much health, extra health, and plus Amoonguss being extra bulky with it not having to invest into special attack in order to deal damage. It just makes it just really good with the regenerator ability. I think in this format, the most common set you're going to see is Rocky Helmet. We already know what Among Us pretty much does. I don't want to go too in depth with this Pokemon because it'll take 20 minutes to explain just what this thing can do, how many different sets it can have. But the most common one that I would run is Spore. I really don't think that you need Protect in this format, so I would go Protect, Spore, Pollen Puff. And when I say you don't need Protect as far as being on Among Us, because Among Us with the Rocky Helmet is doing pretty good. And I also seen some Covert Cloak Among Us as well. Rage Power. If you want to play safe, you can go with the Protect. But I kind of like, I seen Sludge Bomb be really useful into like the Rillaboom. So you kind of like have some good damage to it. Even though you can damage it with Pollen Puff, just the Sludge Bomb does really good into it. You could have Clear Smog in case Dondozo picks back up. And then also I've seen Foul Play. Foul Play is pretty decent. It's just dealing massive damage to like powerful physical type attackers. It does really good into Dragonite with Foul Play. So, and like I said, you can also go with the Triple Protect. But that's going to be the Pokemon in my number 9 slot. In my number 8 slot, we're going to go with 2 Pokemon that are going to take up this spot, right? This is our first slot that takes up 2. It's going to be Iron Bundle and Regieleki. All right. And the reason I chose these 2 together for the 8 spot is because now Iron Bundle's like a new version of Regieleki that does pretty much the same thing, right? You do have double typing, but that strong Hydro Pump is just like going for like a strong Thunder on Regieleki, funny enough, and then they have Icy Wind and Electro Web respectively, right? So the main thing is that it's the fastest Pokemon. This is the fastest Pokemon in the format when it has booster energy. This is the fastest Pokemon in the format just naturally, right? And you're always going to be going for these moves. So if you don't use Bundle, Bundle is there to outspeed Aleki. If it's not there, then Aleki is outspeeding everything, right? And they pretty much go for the same thing, Electro Up, Icy Wind, to make your other Pokemon be able to knock out faster Pokemon or Sash Mons. And it's really good. Regieleki does get like Extreme Speed and Volt Switch, but Iron Bundle does get Flip Turn. So in my opinion, in this format, like you'd probably go with this set, and then this will have Thunderbolt, and then Hydro Pump, Thunder. Regieleki is kind of... Iron Bundle does a little bit more on the support side because Regieleki doesn't get Encore. Regieleki does get Eerie Impulse that you could go for, or Thunder Wave, right? And Substitute. And Iron Bundle doesn't get access to Thunder Wave, but it does get Substitute. It gets Taunt, Encore. So they both can be similar in what they do. It also gets Chilling Water. But I think Iron Bundle's a better support because Regieleki really only has 2 moves that support. You could go for Screech too on Regieleki. But in my opinion, in this format, they kind of do the same thing. You kind of want to tear them into Ghost. You could tear Regieleki to Ice, and then it's an Ice Electric, similar to like Ice Water. And just to hit the ground types, right? Or the grass types that usually are immune or resist the electric attacks. But that's the idea behind these 2. I wanted to rank them together because in this format, I feel like they're kind of the same Pokemon. Just one's a little bit faster. But if you don't want to commit to that booster energy, then you can go with Regieleki, right? And then you could commit to another item like a Choice Scarf or a Choice Specs or a Life Orb, Focus Sash, right? You have the different opportunity. I doubt you'll see both of these on the same team because they have the kind of the same role. So that's why I wanted to rank them together. But that's going to be our number 8 slot. So moving on to our number 7 slot, we have Heatran. Now, Heatran has been one of the most common Pokemon I've seen. Even though I'm ranking it number 7, I've seen it like almost on every team. It's really good. It's the new, like, probably best fire type in the format until Incineroar returns, right? It's doing a lot better than Arcanine due to Urshifu's running around. Urshifu's Surging Strike specifically, because you can intimidate Urshifu's Single Strikes, but then it's going to force Arcanine to have to Terra. And if you don't Terra, it's still going to knock you out with Surging Strikes, right? And so the Intimidate on that is not as valuable as the Flash Fire helping you be immune to other fire moves, as well as just being bulky and having like all these defensive stats, like 106 special defense, 106 defense plus 91 HP. You can like invest a lot into your special attack and not fully max it out, but get a lot of your defenses, right? And the common item I've seen is Leftovers with Grass Terror. I've seen some Life Orb too. And I've also seen a Choice Scarf one. that I'm actually gonna build a team around a Choice Scarf Heatran. But for this one, it's usually Heat Wave. They actually exclude the Flash Cannon. Excuse me. I need to take a sip of water. So Substitute and Protect. Now this is a pretty consistent set. I've also seen some Terra Blast sets, but Heatran is really good right now, and it matches up with Grass Terra. It matches up really well into the format. So Heatran is gonna be our number 7 slot, but I think it might fall off as people kind of get used to playing against it, and it's kind of forced to Terra if you like have a fighting type Urshifu in front of it. It's always gonna want to Terra, and people can start to play around that. A Pokemon that needs to Terra just to not get KO'd. But if you do set it up in a position to where you don't have to Terra it, and it's like an end game, it's really good at like closing out games when you get rid of the checks to it, right? And it doesn't have to Terra, then that's when it can really shine. Our number 6 slot is gonna go to 2 Pokemon as well. So this is gonna be Chien-Pao, Dragonite. Sorry about that. So Dragonite. So the reason I put these two together is because these two are starting to give Dondozo and Tatsugiri vibes. I have rarely seen Dragonite without seeing a Chien-Pao, and I have rarely seen a Chien-Pao on the team without seeing a Dragonite. Like, they've been the best of partners so far in this format, and like every time I see one, I see the other, right? So I kind of want to rank them together because they're so good together. If you want to go Flying Terror or Normal Terror, it's doing so much damage, right, with extreme speed. I like to put Facade on there, so just in case Arcanine goes for the burn, like, you're still doing an extreme amount of damage. Outrage is really powerful, and then you can go for Aerial Ace. Choice Band Aerial Ace is still enough to like one-shot Flutter Mane and do what it needs to do, right? You could go for Thunder Punch or Stumping Tantrum in this slot, or you can just take this one out, right, and go for Stumping. If you don't really want to play around the burn, you just find another way to play around the burn, right? Go for Choice Band. I think that Inner Focus is the better set for this format with Rillaboom and Iron Hands running around with the fake outs and Sneasler. I think not being able to be faked out and just click extreme speed, or you can't be intimidated, is just really, it's more valuable than having the extra bulk, right? If you want to go with multi-scale, I would suggest like Assault Vest just to get the most out of the bulk if you want to go for really bulky Dragonite. Chien-Pao is almost 90% of the time is going to be Focus Sash with Ghost Terror, right? And then Ice Spinner. And the reason these go so good together is because Chien-Pao drops the defense of all the Pokemon around, which makes Dragonite do more damage, right? But also Chien-Pao can remove terrain, which is Psychic Terrain, which is what slows down Chien-Pao and Dragonite, because you can't go for Sucker Punch, you can't go for Extreme Speed, and that way you can outspeed them with like Tailwind and things like that. But Chien-Pao can remove the terrain with Ice Spinner, which makes them like a really deadly combo. Sacred Sword is the most consistent set that you get the most value out of more games, but Haze feels really good when you have it, when you go up against like something that wants to boost up like a Goodra or a Dondozo, then it feels really good to have Haze, right? But other than that, like through most games, this will be the most consistent set that you can use with this Pokemon. But they're gonna be the ones taking up our number 6 slot. So moving on to our top 5, we have, all right, Landers. And that's going to be Landers Therian. Landers is going to be good, but I don't think it's going to be in the top 10 usage of Pokemon. But you will see it, and you will have to like respect it when you do see it. Now, this Pokemon has so many different sets it can run. And like I said, it's just like a Mungus. We'll be here all day trying to decide sets. So I want to go with one that I'm probably going to use first. It's probably just, Life Orb, Flying Terror, and use it like next to a Tailwind Pokemon. Make it really bulky, and then go for a Terra Blast, Earthquake. And you can actually run Stumping Tantrum now that it gets access to it, which is something that's new. It also gets Sand Tomb, so you can actually use Landorus on like a Paris Trap team. You can switch it in, get the Intimidate, and go for Sand Tomb, lock Pokemon in, similar to like Gothitelle, and then go for Paris Trap. So I'm calling it now. You guys will see a Paris Trap Lando with Sand Tomb now that it gets access to that. because it's gonna play similar to Ting Lu, but instead of dropping the special attack, this drops the physical attack with its ability, right? Which is really good. But it doesn't, of course, it doesn't constantly do it like a field effect like how Ting Lu is, but it's still dropping it. So I see it can play a similar role to Ting Lu with different resistances, right? Because you're immune to ground, and you only really have 2 weaknesses in water and ice, and you can Terra away from that. Terra flying is, if you're gonna go for the Paris trap, then maybe Terra water on this is good, because then both its weaknesses become resistances, and then you're already immune to electric, right? And grass is just neutral against you. So water Terra is probably the best Terra for the Paris trap version of this. But just going for this set right here, this is, if you just want to go for just a standard life orb, powerful max attack out Landorus, this is going to do a lot of damage to your opponent. Even if they intimidate you, the life orb is going to kind of help reduce that intimidate if you go with an adamant nature with Tailwind. And this Pokemon is doing so much damage, right? So that's going to be our number 5. Moving on to number 4, it's going to be the queen, because I think Fluttermane looks more like a female Pokemon, so I don't want to say king. The queen of regulation C and B. It's going to be Fluttermane. So Fluttermane, you know, it runs Life Orb, it runs Choice Specs, it runs Booster Energy, it runs Focus Sash. I think Focus Sash is going to be the better item in this format with so many things, powerful Pokemon coming in that can just one-shot it. I think Focus Sash is going to be the most consistent, and then you're going to go for Fairy Terror as the most consistent. And then you can go for, like, if you want to run this set, this is a really consistent set in my eyes. Shadow Ball, so you have spread and single target, and then go for Trick Room and Protect. So this is going to help you against those really hyper offensive Tornadus teams, and that just want to come in and click Tailwind and sweep you. If they're clicking Tailwind turn 1 and their other Pokemon is attacking, they can never stop you from getting Trick Room up because you have the Focus Sash, right? Unless it's like Urshifu Rapid Strike, then it can break through your Sash. But other than that, you can go for like the Water Terror, right? And give yourself, where is it? Water Terror, and give yourself a little bit of defense and some HP. And that way you can survive, you know, the Surgeon Strikes and still get your Trick Room up, right? But if you're going to go for a bulkier Fluttermane, then you might not need the Focus Sash. You can just go for like Booster Energy, or not Booster Energy. You can go for Booster Energy and Special Attack Nature, right? That way you get the Special Attack and you set up Trick Room. But I would recommend Focus Sash and just play around the Urshifu Single Strike because it's more consistent. And just go for like max speed, max Special Attack, right? And probably Timid Nature. And that's going to be like the most common set, I think. You will see Choice Specs to deal damage. You will see Booster Energy and Life Orb just to pick up more KOs. But in order to stop the hyper offense teams, then Trick Room is going to be really good on Fluttermane. There's not really much more to say about this Pokemon. We all know how good it is. We know what it can do. And we know what it's capable of. It's shocking that this is not my number 1, right? That I had 3 Pokemon above it. But I do think that it's going to semi-fall off due to the Urshifus being able to deal so much damage to it, as well as Landorus. And more Pokemon, you know, having Assault Vest to kind of wall it out, right? Assault Vest Lando, Assault Vest Gudra completely destroy Fluttermane, right? So moving on to our number 3 slot. And this is going to be occupied by 2 Pokemon as well. It's going to be the Urshifu brothers. I do think a lot of people might have thought that this should be number 1. But I got another hot take on what I think is going to be number 1 in usage. And like I say, this list is not the best Pokemon, right? This list is simply usage. What I think is going to have the most usage. So I think Urshifu is going to be number 3 in usage. And we can just go over both of these right here. Of course, you know, the water Urshifu is going to be a little bit more common because of the rain combination with Tornadus. And Tornadus is really popular right now, setting up the rain. So combo is really good with this. Plus, you hit 3 times so you can break through sashes, and your water type, so you're a little bit more bulky. And you can tear into water to get away from, to double dip into your water to get away from the fairy weakness with Fluttermane, right? And this one can't really do that. This one wants to tear. If you want to tear into dark, you're still weak to Fluttermane. And you can't tear into fighting, but you do want to, like, if you want to use this defensively, you could go for like a poison or steel terror and add like Iron Head. Or you could just really just go for steel terror and Focus Sash or Black Glasses and play defensive and go for Wicked Blow. Wicked Blow, Sucker Punch, Close Combat, and Detect. Right? and then black glasses so you get the most out of your. So you don't really need a focus sash if you're gonna play a bulkier Urshifu and you want to always tear it if you're in front of a fairy type. But if you want to go for the focus sash set, then you could go for the dark terror and dip into that wicked blow, right? It's just really what you choose to do, but this is a really consistent set as well. If you really want to get spicy, you can just go for dark terror, black glasses, wicked blow, and then now you're kind of playing like King Gambit with the Kowtow Cleave, dark terror, swords dance set, right? You're pretty like similar to that. Even though that's probably gonna hit harder because of the swords dance, this has a chance to crit, which makes up for like not going for that swords dance, right? And you also don't waste a turn having to do that. And plus you can hit through protect. So in retrospect, this might be actually a better set. If you really like that King Gambit set, like just use Urshifu. It's faster, hits through protect, and it doesn't take a turn to set up, right? And like I said, I don't know the exact calc, but this critting can do similar damage to +2 King Gambit with the sword stance and Kowtow Cleave. So that's the idea behind that. And this set, this is usually Mystic Water. They don't usually run Focus Sash on this or Choice Scarf. I think Choice Scarf is a really good item on it just so you can naturally outspeed a lot of Pokemon with the Water Terror. And then you go for Surging. Close Combat, of course, you need Close Combat. Then Ice Spinner so you can remove terrain to help out, like if you want to play next to Chien-Pao. But Chien-Pao already has Ice Spinner, but Ice Spinner is just good coverage into things that want to tear her away from being weak to the water or things like that. Same things when tear into flying. You can hit the Rillaboom super effectively to get rid of its terrain so it can't keep healing. And then U-turn just so you're not locked in to a bad matchup. And if you outspeed things for a fact, you can just get out of there and get something else better in. So Choice Scarf is really good there. And let's move on to our number 2 slot. So our number 2 slot is going to be what I think most of you thought was number 1 after you didn't see Urshifu number 1. It's going to be Tornadus, right? And I want to kind of make 2 Pokemon here. I'm going to put Thundurus. Even though Thundurus is going to be kind of similar to like Urshifu Dark's usage, they kind of play similar roles, right? They want to go for their new move, which is Bleak Wind Storm and Wind Bolt, right? Wind Bolt Storm. And then outside of that, you want to have Taunt, right? And this is why I say they're kind of similar. Now, this is where they start to vary in their last 2 moves, right? Tornadus kind of wants to run Tailwind, right? To make your team faster, but then Thundurus wants to run Thunder Wave, right? And now the last move is usually like you can run, I would say let's just go for, sake of just putting a set together, they both going to use Rain Dance. So this is kind of similar. The only difference is Thunder Wave prevents, it's for like a more bulky team. If you're trying to play like a bulky game with extra damage and you want to slow things down, then that's Thunder Wave and not make them be able to protect. And then, mostly they're Covert Cloak or Mental Hurt, right? Same thing with Cresselia, where you can go for, they think they can't fake you out, so you don't have to worry about, it's similar to like how Cresselia wants to run Mental Hurt, right? They know you're running Mental Hurt, so they kind of don't want to taunt you. They rather fake you out, so they're going to go for the fake out, right? But then if you Covert Cloak on Cresselia, you get around it. Same thing with here is where they think that you're always Covert Cloak, so you kind of don't want to, you don't have to always run this. You can actually run Mental Herb. So since they're not worried about faking you out because they assume that you're Covert Cloak, they're going to want to stop you still somewhere. So they might taunt you with like a max speed Thundurus or Tornadus just to go for that taunt play or the 50-50 taunt play in case you're not max speed. And that way you can go for like a Mental Herb there, right? And now going for the Mental Herb allows you to get your Tailwind up, and he didn't get his up, right? So he did waste a turn getting it up, and you were able to go for like a really fast move with your Pokemon if it outspeeds your opponents. And you could potentially knock out their Thundurus in one hit and they don't get Tailwind up, period, right? And that's the, the secret tech behind having Mental Herb. And you don't even have to be max speed, right? You can, with Mental Herb, you don't have to worry about the taunt. You can invest in your defenses, right? I think this would be like a more niche but better set in my opinion, due to how many people are going to assume that you're Covert Cloak and try to play around that and not even fake you out. And then if you need to get around fake out, in case they still want to be risky and try to go for it, you can always go for the Ghost Terror here, right? Same thing with this. Like I said, this is more bulky, so I would recommend, like a Steel Terror on this, just because you're usually immune to ground, so they're not going to click a ground move into you and still resist all of its weaknesses, right? It's weak to rock, it's weak to ice, and still resist both of those. So that's a good defensive terror for this Pokemon. And you can like explore like so much with these, but I think these two a combination are going to be number 2 in usage. Like, you're going to see that pretty much. If you don't see Tornadus on a team and it's not a Trick Room team, you're going to see Thunders, right? That's going to play like bulky, balanced teams, right? It's going to be like hyper offense teams. And then Cresselia is going to be like for the Trick Room variant. So you're going to see, I could put Cresselia up here with these two, but I think these two are going to be more common than Cresselia just because Cresselia is easier to play around because you know it wants to go for Trick Room. With these, you don't really know whether this can be unless you kind of like delve that from the team preview. But like I seen like this go with Snowscape, Sandstorm, and Sunny Day with Heat Wave, right? So it can be like a lot of different sets. So in my opinion, these two are going to be number 2 in usage, right after Urshifu and the 2 Urshifu twins, right? So going to our last Pokemon, and this is going to be my take. This is going to be the Pokemon I believe is going to see the most usage in the upcoming format early on, and that's going to be Rillaboom. And why do I think Rillaboom? Rillaboom is going to be the most splashable Pokemon. Like, whatever team that you have, if you have a hyper offense team, if you have a balanced team, if you have a Trick Room team, you can throw Rillaboom onto that team with Fake Out, and it's going to help your team be better. It's most likely going to be Assault Vest, so you can take on Flutter Mane. You can one-shot Flutter Mane with Wood Hammer, or you can play like a game where you go for Drum Beating. That way you do some damage to Flutter Mane and drop the speed, and then next turn something else can pick it up, right? Or you can EV this to outspeed it after a -1 drop, right? And then the next one is a filler move. Most people won't go with Double Grass, but Stumping Tantrum is good. Or you can go for like Knockoff. It also gets U-Turn. I think U-Turn might be better than Knockoff, even though this kind of walls you against like flying types, like Landorus. I still think this is the best set if you bring the proper support to deal with Landorus, right? And then Fire Terror is probably going to be the most common, so you're not getting that damage reduced by burn. And then most of them are going to be max attack. Now, the reason that this Pokemon is going to see the most usage in my eyes is because it counters, not Tornadus, the second in usage, but it counters the Urshifu brothers. It's really good against knocking them out, especially Urshifu Water, which I feel like is going to have, the most usage out of the 2 Urshifu brothers. It's a really good counter into that. Flutter Mane is going to be really good into this Pokemon. Not into this Pokemon, into the format. And so having the Assault Vest and also having, Wood Hammer to just one-hit KO it makes Rillaboom really good. Like, it's really splashable. Also, Ursaluna, a lot of people are going to be trying to use it early on in the format. You resist, you weaken those Earthquake moves. You weaken Earthquake from Landorus and Ursaluna and those ground types like Tinglu if it's still around. And that's just that's really good into those teams that like to go Earthquake Discharge or Earthquake plus a flying type. Like, their Earthquakes are not doing any damage due to Rillaboom's grassy terrain, right? And like I said, it's really good into the ground types. And I feel like it's going to be the most splashable Pokemon. Like, you put this on your team, it balances out your Fire, Water, Grass core. It balances out your hyper offense team because you can make it really offensive and fast. It balances out your Trick Room team because it supports helping get Trick Room up, and it's relatively at a speed to where you cannot invest in it, and it's decent under Trick Room, and it's just naturally bulky. Like, I think that this is going to be on like every team, but kind of like how Incineroar was on every team back in Sword and Shield. Even though Rillaboom was on every team back then too, but Incineroar was just a little bit more usage than it. I think that this is going to be like, until we get an Incineroar, it's going to be like the new splashable Incineroar. It doesn't have Intimidate, right? But the Fake Out plus like U-Turn Pivot, like to reset Fake Out and Assault, it's going to be really good. And not having like really carry Protect. And then also like you can go for like Swords Dance, since people are always going to expect you to not have Protect. And then you can go for like, Leftovers, right? And Protect. And just make it really bulky with Swords Dance and Fake Out Wood Hammer. Or you don't even need Fake Out if you want to go that set. They can play around you and Drain Punch, right? And this can be a really good set. Like, and actually Wood Hammer is going to be taking your damage. So I would say Drum Beating, just so you're faster than things. And I can see this set kind of like picking up in usage. People not expecting it. And it just being like a Rillaboom that sticks around on the field and drops things speed and heals back up with Drain Punch, and it's just doing a lot of damage, right? And you can try to intimidate it, but it can just Swords Dance it back up. And you can even go with Clear Amulet, right? But this could kind of play similar to like Annihilate in a little bit, where you're getting the Rage Fist boost, but you're just healing back up, and you're kind of hard to knock out, and then you're just boosting your attack, right? I can see this, you know, set taking off. But Rillaboom is gonna, it's people are gonna move away from the assault vest because it's gonna be kind of predictable, and people are gonna start like doubling up into Rillaboom because they don't want to keep cycling fake outs, right? So they kind of want to remove it, and that is where, like, you know, switching the assault vest to something like protect can come into effect. And I think Rillaboom is gonna be the most used Pokemon early on in the format. And like I said, this list is not the best Pokemon. I do not by far think Rillaboom is going to be the best Pokemon in this early format, right? But I do think it's going to have the most usage as far as being splashable on every team. But this is going to be my list. If you agree with it, go ahead and drop a like for me. Leave a comment, subscribe if you disagree, or if you think something should be on this list that's not on this list. And let me know what your opinion is. Drop a subscribe for me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Let's have some fun in this new series, and that's going to be Regulation D. All right, deuces.